Water is as old as the earth. As far as we know, the amount of water on Earth has never changed. That's amazing when you think that the water in your faucet may have been deep in the sea millions of years ago, or it may have been in a glacier for 1,000 years. When you are done with it, it goes down the drain, and sooner or later back to a lake or ocean, where it may rise up into the sky and form a cloud that travels around the world to be used again. All over the planet, the sun helps nature recycle water in the water cycle. The water cycle has 3 main parts. Evaporation is when water turns into invisible water vapor and rises into the air. Condensation is when water vapor forms clouds, dew, or frost. And precipitation is when water falls from clouds as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. There is also a 4th part to the water cycle. It's called runoff, and that's when water runs downhill to flow into streams, lakes, or oceans. In the water cycle, we see water's different forms and properties. It can be solid ice that does not change shape, liquid water that moves and flows, or water vapor that floats in the air. The parts of the water cycle can control the climate of cities worldwide. Some places stay warm and wet, while others stay cold and dry. The water cycle is like an engine, and the fuel for it is heat from the sun. The more heat that comes from the sun, the faster the water cycle works. At night, and even in places where you don't have much heat, the water cycle continues as liquid water changes to ice or water vapor, and back again. We call these phase changes. The water cycle makes sure that clean water falls from the sky and is spread around the earth in one way or another. This makes it possible for people, plants, insects, and animals to survive and live almost anywhere. Evaporation is when tiny water droplets rise into the air as clean water vapor. Heat from the sun makes evaporation go faster. That's why if you heat a pot of water for a long time, it turns to steam and the water disappears. Moving air or wind also speeds up evaporation. Water vapor is invisible, but when there is a lot in the air, we feel the moisture on our skin. In the summer, people say the air is humid when it is filled with water vapor. After the rain ends on a warm day, we watch how quickly puddles and pavement dry off as the water evaporates. From salty oceans, lakes, and even swimming pools, water evaporates as fresh water. It is not always easy to notice when water is deep, but if you watch closely and take measurements, you'll find that all water evaporates into the air. Water that is in the ground can also evaporate, but that is slower since soil particles get in the way. Trees and plants help water turn into water vapor through transpiration. Transpiration is when the leaves of plants give off water that evaporates into the air. In a forest, transpiration plays a big part in the water cycle. The roots of plants, bushes, and trees pull water out of the ground, and then the leaves allow it to escape. You can do a simple experiment to prove this. Just put a clear bag over some leaves of a tree or bush for an hour. Examine it, and you'll find clean water. Did you know that ice can turn directly into water vapor without melting first? When ice turns straight to water vapor, that's called sublimation. Sublimation is how snow can disappear after a few days, even when the temperature stays below freezing. It doesn't melt, it changes directly to vapor. You can see this by leaving ice cubes in your freezer for a few weeks. Notice that they gradually get smaller and smaller as the ice changes phase from solid to vapor. Condensation is when water vapor changes to a bunch of tiny water droplets that we see together as clouds. Sometimes these clouds are made of crystals of ice instead of water droplets. Condensation happens when air cannot hold any more water vapor. To make condensation, just keep filling the air with water vapor by evaporating more and more of it. When we shower, many of us make condensation clouds. The clouds that nature creates take on many shapes, sizes, and colors. They form at any height, and sometimes they even form on the ground as fog. These clouds make it easy for wind to push a lot of water around the earth to places that need moisture. Clouds can keep us cool by blocking sunlight during the day. Another way to make condensation is to cool the air. This can happen when wind blows over cool water or cool land, or when air rises up the side of a mountain. There are two special kinds of condensation when no cloud is formed. They both happen after a clear night with calm wind. Sometimes we wake up to find small beads of water on grass or cars. That's dew. When the temperature is below freezing, you might see ice crystals instead, especially on windows. That's frost. You can tell that it didn't fall from the sky because the sky is clear. Dew and frost happen when the temperature cools down and the air can't hold any more water vapor. In deserts, these are important ways for plants, insects, and animals to get water. You've probably noticed that after you take something out of the refrigerator, you see water droplets form on it. We also notice condensation on a glass of ice water. When you take something out of the freezer, you find ice crystals on that. As clouds get thicker, the water droplets inside of them grow heavy enough to fall. Water or ice that falls from clouds is called precipitation. Precipitation is rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Rain can cool off a hot city, help to fill a reservoir, and supply water to ecosystems. Too much rain causes problems. Lake levels can rise and flood people's homes. Floodwater can drown animals, people, and even plants and trees. The places on Earth that get the most rain are near large bodies of water near the equator. Away from the equator, snow falls in layers to keep the ground from getting too cold. Too much snow at once can stop us from getting where we want to go. Snow that piles up is very heavy, and it may damage tree branches and property. Sleet is half-frozen rain or half-melted snow that can make a slushy mess. Hail is pieces of ice that fall from powerful thunderstorms. When hail is large, it damages plants, crops, trees, and rooftops. All precipitation delivers water to the Earth's surface. A scientist who predicts precipitation is called a meteorologist. Runoff describes what happens to precipitation after it hits the ground. It simply will run off, downhill. Of course, if it is snow, sleet, or hail, it has to melt first. But a lot of the water that falls from the sky flows in streams and rivers until it ends up in a lake or ocean. When water runoff is always in the same path, or when it is very heavy and fast, it carries pieces of soil and rock and moves them downhill. That's called erosion. You can see erosion by spraying water onto a pile of sand. Runoff from heavy precipitation can be destructive. It can fill streams with solid soil pieces called sediment that make it hard for fish to breathe. Heavy runoff can also carry pollution great distances. It can muddy the water so plants have a hard time getting sunlight to remain healthy. Runoff may weaken tree roots. It's always worse in cities with a lot of pavement. Runoff is also heavy in fields where there is little grass or plant life to help slow the water and soak it up. It's a good idea for any construction area to use fences to keep soil and pollutants from being washed away. Precipitation that does not run off slowly soaks into the ground. This is called percolation. If the ground is sandy, water can percolate into it pretty fast. When the ground lets water soak in fast, we say it is porous. But if the ground has a lot of clay in it, then it's not very porous, and the percolation will be slow. As the water sinks into the ground, the soil and plants help to filter it and clean it. You can demonstrate how porous something is using muddy water, cotton balls, and a funnel. Pour the water into the cotton in the funnel to see how fast it moves through and to see how much of the sediment the cotton can catch. Water that percolates down into the ground is then called groundwater. All forms of water take a lot of heat from the sun to slowly warm up. Once water is warm, it takes a long time to cool down. So all parts of the water cycle control temperature, precipitation, and climate. Climate is the average kind of weather that a place has. Islands with a lot of sunshine near the equator have climates that are humid and rainy because the sun's heat speeds up evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and runoff. All parts of the water cycle are connected. In sandy deserts, dry climates include hot days and cold nights. Without much water from the water cycle, it's easier for the temperature to rise and fall fast. Water plays an important role on Earth in weather and climatic patterns. Runoff from precipitation can wear things down in erosion and carry them away. Water can also dissolve anything that sits in it long enough, so we call it the universal solvent. This makes water valuable in keeping ecosystems healthy. The water cycle produces climates where humans and animals can live and find fresh water. Now that you are water smart, let's take a quiz. True or false? Number 1. The water cycle stops at night. Number 2. Hail is a type of precipitation. Number 3. Percolation helps to clean water. Number 4. Dew is condensation. Number 5. There is no water cycle where it is cold. Number 6. Evaporation is faster when it is warm. Number 7. Snow helps to deliver fresh water. Number 8. There is no water anywhere in a desert. Number 9. There is more runoff on pavement than on grass. And number 10. Plants help out in the water cycle.